A closer look now at Canada's security strategy when it comes to foreign fighters and violent extremism. Stephanie Carvin is an assistant professor at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Her work focuses on security and terrorism, and she has previously worked as a security analyst for the federal government. So first, how would you describe Canada's approach, particularly to foreign fighters?
Well, I think the main thing is that there seems to be widespread agreement. You can't treat this as a one-size-fits-all problem, that people who go overseas do so for a variety of purposes and objectives. And when they come back, they're also, going to have had different experiences. Some will have been very dejected and realized they made a terrible mistake. And some of them may have been forced to come back. And so they may still have a very much violent, radicalized mindset. So you can't really just have one program. You have to have a toolkit, and you have to be able to assess the person, assess in the first instance, is this person still a major threat, or is this person actually someone who just needs some counseling to get, kind of reintegrated back into society?
Does Canada have the toolkit?
Well, we've been working on developing it, and we've been researching it for a number of years, right? With the Conservatives have kind of downplayed this, but the Conservative government under Stephen Harper was actually very much funding a lot of the research that's now being put into place. So I think, what we've done is kind of modeled ourselves off of programs that are in Europe, in particular in Denmark, that have actually, tried to bring together many different actors. So you have healthcare workers, you have local and community religious institutions. You also, though, have the police services and national security involved. And they work together as a team for each individual case to try and design a program that's appropriate for that person, and where they can also follow up as well and make sure that this person continues to be on the right path.
But when you say the government is putting together the toolkit, there's an immediate problem now. I mean, we're seeing foreign fighters leaving the battlefield in the Middle East and coming back to Canada and to other countries as well. I mean, the threat is, for many people, the threat is real.
Yeah, no, and it is. I would never want to downplay that. There is a significant threat, but I think part of the problem with the discourse that we've had is that, there's assumption that, when we talk about 60 returnees, that these are 60 ISIS fighters, and that's not the case, right? So it's like, we have to, look, there's people such as Amar Singh in Toronto who've been, actually conducting interviews with these people, and they've been kind of keeping track, and they estimate that maybe 10 ISIS fighters have come back. So the thing is, what do you actually do with these people? And there is no perfect solution. We do have a toolkit that are being put in place. So again, these kind of European-style programs, although they're looser, I would say. But by and large, I think we do have the security services are aware of these people, and although they may not be under 24/7 monitoring, it's not like we're just letting them free and wander around Saskatchewan or something.
Prosecution is very difficult.
It is.
Because it's difficult to collect evidence. When you look, though, at the spectrum, we had the British Defence Minister earlier this week said, we're going to hunt them down and kill them. We don't want these people coming back to our country. There's a spectrum of responses here. Where does Canada fit in that spectrum?
Right. Well, I think, there's a couple of things. First of all, if you go to an armed conflict and take up arms against Canada, you can be killed on the battlefield. So, it's not to say that Canada hasn't, been engaged in kinetic activity against these foreign fighters. But by and large, we're not actively targeting them in ways such as we're not sending our soldiers after them. We're not giving information to Kurdish militias, which have kind of been some of the reporting have suggested. So no, our response has mostly been, dealing with these individuals when they come back. But there's two other things here that I think are important to consider. First of all, the widespread expectation is that most of the individuals who've gone over and engaged in fighting are probably dead, right? They're not actually, it's not clear that there's actually a lot of these guys to hunt down and kill, even if you wanted to. And in the second instance, again, it's not clear how many of our individuals actually engaged in fighting. So what do you do with the individual who went over but is a 19-year-old pregnant girl? Do you want to hunt her down? No, you're going to have to figure out some way of dealing with her when she gets back. She may still have a radicalized mindset. She may still actually pose a national security threat. I don't want to say she's an innocent victim here, but the fact is you can't just hunt and kill down this problem. It's far broader than that.
The other question I want to put to you is, and others have talked about this, is that the underlying tension and situations that led to the recruitment, that led to the formation of ISIS in the first place, really hasn't changed. Is that your view too?
I think it has, in the sense that as you know, one of the things that we saw here was the role of the internet in terms of spreading propaganda. There's a big debate in the counterterrorism community as to what the exact role of the internet is and propaganda is, and often there's in-person contacts, and so that groups of friends will go over. But by and large, what we know is that the Islamic State has changed its plans in terms of it's no longer encouraging people to come over. It's saying no, attack where you are, especially if you're in the West. And the other thing, though, is that, you know, there's analysts like Charlie Winter who've been studying the Islamic State for some time. They argue that actually ISIS has lost a lot of its propaganda abilities as it's lost its territory. So we are seeing a shift, and there will be another kind of change in the way that violent extremism occurs. And, you know, what terrorism was in 2001 is not what terrorism is now in 2017. And so this is one of the really tough things that governments have to deal with, is that actually things do change over time. But, you know, we've seen different kinds of Islamophobia rise in Canada, and how that actually manifests, how we actually can encourage communities to build resilience. It remains very, very important national security conversations that we need to have.
Stephanie, thank you for your expertise.
Thanks for having me on.